Tonight, we are watching something happen that, a year ago, absolutely nobody would have put money on. One of the most loyal MAGA loyalists in the entire Republican Party, sitting at a wooden table with Tucker Carlson, Thomas Massie, and a former counterterrorism official, plotting what she is now openly calling a movement, and using the word betrayed to describe the president she once got a kiss from on the floor of Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson are building a third party, not hinting at it, not teasing it in an interview, building it with a photo to prove it, and a caption that reads like a breakup letter to the entire Republican Party. So tonight, let's talk about how the woman who once wore a hat that said Trump was right about everything ended up here, sitting across from cookies and milk, declaring the movement has begun. Let's rewind, because this didn't happen overnight. It happened in stages, and each stage got a little more personal than the last. Back in June, Greene broke with Trump publicly for the first time in a meaningful way, and notice what it was over. Not taxes, not immigration, not anything domestic. It was over Tucker Carlson. After Israel struck Iran and Carlson criticized American involvement, Trump brushed him off, calling him kooky in an interview. Greene, instead of staying quiet like she had on nearly everything else for years, posted directly in Carlson's defense, saying he unapologetically believes the same things I do, and then laid out exactly what those things were. That foreign wars and regime change put America last, kill innocent people, make the country broke, and that calling that position kooky is calling millions of America First voters kooky too. That was the first real crack. By November, the crack had become a canyon. Trump pulled his endorsement of Greene entirely, called her a ranting lunatic, and floated backing a primary challenger against her. And then came the nicknames. Because with this president, things have gotten personal when the nicknames start rolling out. First, it was Wacky Marjorie. Within 24 hours, he escalated to Marjorie Taylor Greene, explaining on Truth Social that green grass turns brown when it begins to rot. Then, later that same day, a third one. Marjorie Traitor Greene. 3 separate insults in about a day, which is not the pace of a president who's mildly annoyed. That's the pace of a president who feels genuinely betrayed by someone he used to trust. Greene's response at the time was almost eerily calm by comparison. She said she never thought fighting to release the Epstein files, defending rape victims, and exposing what she called a web of rich, powerful elites would lead to this. But here we are, and it speaks for itself. She also said she was getting threats she believed were fueled by, in her words, the most powerful man in the world, and called for what she described as a new way forward. In January, she resigned from Congress altogether. So by the time this week's photo dropped, this wasn't a woman having a bad week with her party. This was a woman who had already been publicly disowned, insulted 3 times in one weekend, and had already walked away from her own seat. Now let's talk about Saturday, because that's when the theoretical third party stopped being theoretical. Greene posted a photo on X of herself, her new husband Brian Glenn, who she'd just married in Las Vegas days earlier, sitting at a table with Tucker Carlson at the head, flanked by Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie and his wife, and Joe Kent, the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, who quit his post earlier this year specifically in protest of the Iran war. The caption is the part doing all the work here. She wrote, quote, "We said no more foreign wars, and we meant it and supported Donald Trump because he made that promise, but he's betrayed us all." End quote. Our commitment is America first for all Americans, right, left, and center, she continued. The movement has begun. This isn't vague dissatisfaction anymore. This is a direct, on-the-record accusation that the president broke the single promise that got these people to vote for him in the first place, delivered by a group that includes a sitting congressman, a former top counterterrorism official, and one of the most influential media figures on the right. And Carlson himself has been building toward this for months. Back in June, he said outright that he was done voting for Republicans and that he was working to help build a new third party, arguing that both parties are too consumed with foreign affairs while ordinary Americans' lives fall apart at home. He's also been pointed about why, saying Trump's 2024 campaign was heavily funded by people with what he called loyalty to Israel, and suggesting that funding is now steering decisions away from what's actually best for the country. And Trump has waved that off before, saying back in March about the Iran war that if anything, he might have forced Israel's hand, which is a fairly remarkable thing to say when you're trying to convince skeptics that you weren't the one driving the war forward. And Greene herself had already floated the party idea publicly before this photo even existed, telling Piers Morgan back on June 30th that she believed there was a group of people who, if they aligned, could launch a genuine America First party that skips the traps of both Democrats and Republicans and pulls serious players from both sides. So this wasn't a spontaneous table full of frustrated friends. This was a plan that had been announced in pieces for 2 months. And Saturday was the moment it got a name, a photo, and a headline. So where does this actually go from here? And why should you care about a handful of MAGA renegades eating cookies at a wooden table? Because third parties in American politics almost never win outright. That's true. History is not kind to them. But they don't need to win to matter. They just need to peel off enough of a coalition to change the math. And that's exactly the danger this represents for Trump heading into the midterms. Massie is already a lame duck congressman with nothing left to lose politically. Kent walked away from a serious national security post on principle. Carlson has a media reach that dwarfs most cable anchors, even after leaving Fox. And Greene, whatever you think of her, spent years being one of the most recognizable, most online MAGA voices in the country. And she is now telling that exact audience, in plain language, that the man they trusted broke his word. If even a fraction of the America First base that cared most about ending foreign wars decides these are the people telling the truth instead of the White House, that's not a fringe protest vote. That's a real dent in a coalition Trump has spent a decade building, and the timing could not be worse for him. Landing right in the middle of a war in Iran that is already dragging his approval numbers down across multiple pollsters, with his own party support starting to soften. A rebellion from the isolationist wing of his own movement, led by people with real platforms and real grievances, is exactly the kind of story that doesn't disappear in a week. Whether this actually becomes a functioning political party with ballot access and candidates, or whether it fizzles into another one of those movements that gets announced and then quietly fades, we genuinely don't know yet. But the fact that it's even a real question tonight, that a woman who once got kissed on the House floor by this president is now sitting across a table, calling him a betrayer with the cameras rolling, tells you everything about where this relationship actually stands. That's the show tonight. We'll be right back after this.